Hi, I'm SynthDad. This is one of the most exciting devices I have in my studio right now. It's a MIDIHub. It's an intelligent MIDI processing hub. You can use it to do all sorts of crazy things with MIDI signals, and I'm going to show you in this video some of the things I've learned about how you can use it to create generative ambient music. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and leave me comments on the MIDIHub or anything else on my channel down below. Let's get started. First of all, what's the audio routing here? The only audio that we're generating today is 4 tracks from the Digitone routed through a patch on the Zoia coming in here and then routed into my mixer here. Each of these 4 tracks has its own preset loaded, and I'm going to start with just the first track so we can see how the MIDI sequencing works, and I can explain to you what I've done in terms of dropping notes to actually create the interesting melodies. The way the MIDI is routed is very simple. The only melody that's playing is coming from the sequencer on the Keystep. The sequencer on the Digitone is not playing any notes. There are no notes programmed into any of the tracks. So when I play that's the melody that's simply playing over and over again through this whole track, but because of how the notes are going to get chopped up and dispatched across different channels here and randomly changed around and repitched, it'll take on a whole different sound. MIDI is coming out of the Keystep and it's running on its own internal clock here, and I set the rate here. MIDI is coming out here into input A of the MIDIHub. From there, I'm going to dispatch it to different pipes, let you see here on the screen. The output A of the MIDIHub goes into the MIDI in of the Digitone, and it's going to take all of the notes and just dispatch them to each of the 4 tracks on channel 1, 2, 3, and 4. The Faderfox allows me to control randomized parameters here on the MIDIHub and also patch settings over here on the Zoia. It sends its MIDI out here on channel 9, I think, and it comes in on MIDI channel or MIDI port B on the MIDIHub. In addition, there's output of MIDI on port B here, which goes into the MIDI in of the Zoia. Now, why do I do that? There are 2 or 3 parameters on this patch which I'd like to control, mainly the plate reverb amount and the ping pong delay amount, and the mix amounts of those I can vary through the track. I've started with everything disabled so you can see what's going on. This patch is based on the patch that Loopop showed in his demo video, but I've changed it around to add additional LFOs, which we'll see in a second. All of the input comes in on MIDI A, and that's then dispatched to 4 pipelines, which take each of the notes coming in regardless of the channel and map it onto channel 1, 2, 3, or 4 by discarding all the other channels. Each of those notes are delayed by a certain amount, different for each channel, to create a certain delay effect. And then we use a random module to modify the pitch up or down an octave. And then we use a chance module which drops a note randomly based on the probability, which I'm going to map to an external controller. So you see here this controller is for this chance pipeline is receiving on input B, channel 1, control code 5, which corresponds to this knob here. And this one is on input B, channel 1, knob 6, which corresponds to this one here, CC 6. So I've mapped these 4 knobs to control the probability that these delayed notes will get output again to MIDI A. I also have this straight through pipe here. What this is doing is just taking the notes played straight out of this and making sure something gets played on the Digitone, because basically all of these could end up dropping a note and nothing would play and you'd have silence and would sound a bit weird. So what this does is it lets at least a set of notes through. But again, I've mapped the probability that a note will get played to this master chance knob here. I'm calling it master chance, this knob 1 here. So you see I've mapped those using the map feature. So when I turn this knob, as you see on the screen, the probabilities are going up and down. So if we hit play, and then I turn down the probability, the notes stop playing because the probability has gone to 0 and nothing else is active. I turn this back up. About half of the notes are coming through at 50%. And now I turn it up to 100%. And everything is going through. So let's now activate the dispatcher. What this does is it takes the MIDI notes coming in on port A, and then it dispatches them across 4 channels in turn, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the first note goes to channel 1, the second note goes to channel 2, the third note goes to channel 3, and they just keep going around and around. What this lets me do then is send different notes into these pipelines. And the idea here is that each note might get played, might get delayed, might get repitched, so it's constantly evolving and changing. In addition, we've got a certain set of notes going through here as well, so always something is going to be played. Now, as you can hear, with all 4 tracks volume raised, there's random notes coming through, and you can adjust the probabilities here. Now let's introduce the patch on the Zoia. Because we're using the sequencer on the Keystep, I can repitch what gets played by simply pressing a note. It'll rebase the notes on the sequence to that note. Okay, this is all very nice, but what about making some additional LFOs? On the Digitone, you have 2 LFOs by default, and each of these presets on the Digitone have them used for different things, like modulating the harmonics or the feedback. But wouldn't it be nice if you had some more LFOs that you could do some more modulation with, to add even more movement to this sound? So this is where the CC LFO module comes into play. If you look on the MIDIHub window, you'll see that I've set these up to modulate the harmonics, the mix amount, and also the delay send amount for each of the tracks. But rather than have them all go on the same cycle, they're all working to different frequencies and starting on different LFO phases, so they're all ever so slightly out of sync with each other. In addition, the delay kind of goes up on a ramp and then down, whereas these are modulated using sine waves. So again, we're getting very different interplays of sound, changing over time, non-predictable, and all very, very kind of dynamic to really, really create some interesting movement here. So let's enable all of these and watch the changes on the screen as the LFOs are generated here on the MIDIHub, sent out MIDI A, output A, into the Digitone, and then change these parameters. And now we've got the XY mix changing. We've got the delay send ramping up slowly and then goes back to 0. And we have each of these moving on a different cycle. So they're all going to actually change differently because they're all on different sine waves and on different start phases. So the sounds now are going to become even more dynamic. Let's have a listen. The one remaining area that I wanted to be able to control was some settings on the patches on the Zoia. For that, I just created this very simple straight through from input B to output A that goes to the Digitone, and then from input B to output B. So from the Faderfox to the Zoia. And then over here, I have starred 2 parameters, which is the plate reverb amount and the ping pong delay amount, the mix amount, and I've mapped them onto CC's 0 and 1, and the Zoia listens on channel 5. So these 2 guys are able now to adjust the mix of the plate reverb and the ping pong delay, which we can do as follows. So if we maximize out the ping pong delay, it becomes very, very echoey. We maximize the plate reverb, tons of reverb washing all over the place. Bathing in reverb. Very rich. Wow. I'm going to do a lot more videos with the MIDIHub, so please don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, leave me some questions or comments in the comments down below, and stay tuned for more videos. Thanks for watching.